starting on Holy Thursday. This great recollection and reenacting in some ways of the Last Supper, which has these different aspects and then ends up, like we were saying before, in this beautiful procession and different things like that. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of really interesting and beautiful things. If there was one word you'd come up with to describe that liturgy, one word to describe the Holy Thursday liturgy, what would it be?
Eucharist. It's the institution of the Eucharist.
Humbling. Because that's when the Lord washes the feet of his disciples. Father Israel always has the teenagers, and he washes their feet. And it's great to see.
Sadness for me, It's just it's an experience where you just think about it. You try to put yourself back there. Especially for the apostles. To think that this is not going well.
Right.
and Jesus knew where he was going. And he. For me, it was just like this, wow.
I think heartbreaking sometimes. We know what ends up happening afterwards, but, I agree with everything that else was said, but I think of, his apostles and, eventually someone denying that they knew him. And to me, I find that hard, because for me, someone being loyal is huge. So to me, that's heartbreaking that in his time of need, he didn't have that from everyone.
I think I'll go with fellowship, because everything that was done within the context of a meal shared with friends. So the Eucharist and the washing of the feet, just knowing that Jesus chose to spend these final moments gathered with his closest friends and to share the institution of the Eucharist in that kind of small, intimate setting. It's just rather powerful. He could have done it, to a huge crowd or something like that, but this context of this small meal with his friends, for me, it's always very evocative to think of them all sharing these final moments together just as friends.
Brings up a good point. 'Cause he could pick who he wanted to be with.
Right.
He chose his friends. He wasn't with his parents. So, good point.
I think I'm going to go with priesthood. I'm going to be that guy. But it is, we talk about it as the institution of the Eucharist, and also as well the institution of the priesthood. And for me, in this vocation that I've been called to, it's that beginning. That is humbling in its own ways, but also motivating and really clarifying, and I think it gives me courage in some ways to be able to look as Jesus is instituting the priesthood, and these apostles kind of know what he's doing, but kind of don't know what he's doing, and all that. And so on days when I'm just totally lost, it's kind of like, oh well, it kind of started that way too, so it's okay, right? And really just having that enter our worlds, which then delves into, like Miles said, just this centerpiece of the Eucharist, and everything that then flows out of that for us in our faith and everything that we are, is just incredible. So to be able to point to and to celebrate and literally say, on this day we're going to remember it, something like that, I think is so important for who we are, which is awesome. Has anybody ever had their feet washed? Mm-hmm. Yeah? What did that feel like?
So,
Go ahead.
my experience, again, it wasn't a Catholic. I was at like a community service trip in New Orleans. But long story short, it was with a very dear friend of mine. Really, the young man who essentially told me about Jesus in college and what made me start to take my faith seriously. Anyways, yeah, it was just profound. I mean, we washed each other's feet, and so being the one to have your feet washed was so, like, weird, and it was so, like, you just felt like you just didn't deserve it. Like, this friend was a really good friend, like a brother to me, and I just looked up to him so much, and to see him washing my feet was just, I mean, we were crying the whole time. Like, it was just so dramatic in the best way. But then to wash his feet was such an honor. It was, like, yeah, it was, it was what I wanted to do. Yeah, I'm missing the words, but it was profound. It was very, very spiritual, surprisingly, to wash someone's feet. Yeah, so I that was my only experience, but it was certainly transformative, for sure.
Humbling, very humbling. And I think that someone would wash your feet. And Jesus put himself in that situation as an example of who he was.
Yeah.
And so it's a wonderful tradition, I think. Wonderful.